How's it going, YouTube? Nebula697 here, and today I want to bring you my first video for Anthem, specifically from the VIP demo over the most recent weekend, some of the gameplay that we've captured for most of the aspects that were available during this time, and also my thoughts on whether it worked well and whether the game would be a good fit for me personally. Starting off then, we'll take a look at flying. Javelins, it was a little bit tricky to start off learning how to fly the javelins, in all honesty. When you've got the movement controls, you've got the direction of the camera and the direction you're flying with the mouse, in addition to additional movement controls such as evading, sprinting, jumping, etc. It can be a lot to take in at first and will take some adjustment for those not particularly proficient in flying in video games such as myself. However, once you've got the hang of that, you really get a great sense of scale from the environments that we were able to play in the VIP demo. The sense of verticality, the sense of travelling and distance, and just generally getting around the areas becomes quite a joy when you can fly. You can fly through the air and you can correctly pilot your javelin after some practicing. So if you're a little bit like me, it may take a while to get used to that. Would probably benefit from a tutorial or some sort of training early on, but you can get round to that fairly soon on. Combat is particularly fun in this game, and normally, having spent a lot of my time on the ground or as an infantry in similar games, I didn't make the most of combat in the air, particularly with any of the javelins that I used, but the combat itself is still very rewarding. From firing your primary weapons that only have a smaller amount of ammo with base gear involved, and also then the abilities that you get for each javelin, you can set up combos, you can do some great bit of effective damage as a team, and on the whole it feels like the use of the weapons and the variety available and the use of the abilities does correlate to make a fairly cohesive battle experience. You know that you're definitely in combat, you know that you're firing against something and it's having an impact of that. You can see the explosions, the health bar, the damage numbers, and it all creates a good sense of progression when you are in combat and you're taking enemies down. During the VIP demo, we played at first exclusively as the Ranger class, a bit of an all-rounder, the Mario of the range of the javelins, sorry, and we were given an option to take on one further javelin as we completed the rest of the VIP demo. So of the additional 3 available, I personally went for the Colossus, as I wanted to try this playstyle out first and foremost and see if it was something that I would particularly gel with as a player. And so that's the one I went for, and I spent the rest of my time with the Colossus, trying out its abilities, the pros and cons, and the very different playstyle that each javelin will promote. Specifically then, I won't have to be flying around a lot, I won't have to be firing off large abilities from the air. I can get a lot of aggro from the enemies that are around me and help out my team in that way with buffs and supports and shields. Pick up my own personal shield to absorb incoming damage, get involved in some melee fights, regenerate some of my health back through picking up health packs, and generally get out to safety with the use of that personal shield. The ultimate on this javelin as well is pretty fantastic, allowing you to regenerate your health fully, be completely immune during the duration, and fire off a volley of almost nuclear blasts there. And deal an awful lot of damage when doing so, but it will depend on the gear that you've got equipped, as the gear in each gear slot will amend the abilities that you use on your javelin, including your ultimate, so that will be different depending on what bit of gear you've got equipped at the time. But I certainly felt as a playstyle it worked, and I would probably lean towards learning a lot more from a more experienced player in order to get better at using the class, tanking those enemies, getting the aggro, dipping into cover, effective use of the shield, and then how to regenerate health. Whether there's more ways to do so than other than just the health packs on the floor and the ultimate remains to be seen from my perspective, but as a class it was pretty fantastic, and an awful lot of fun to play once I had realised the strengths and the weaknesses of the class. On to the loot then, and it was pretty plentiful during the VIP demo due to the drop rates being increased for this period, so it's not particularly an accurate depiction of what you're likely to get after X amount of time playing in a mission or in free play as such, but it does let us have a look at the gear slots and the equipment and the customization available, and get a bit of a sense of what can be done to change those. So you'll have your slot for 2 weapons, the main weapons on there, and there's a good amount of variety in the weapons, from grenade launchers, shotguns, marksman's rifles, snipers, assault rifles, LMGs, etc. You'll have a couple of slots for your abilities, one more offensive and one more defensive, and you'll have a slot for your ultimate, and also some components to get in some passive buffs that will generally increase your armour or shielding or resistances and such. So there'll be component drops for all of those different slots. There'll be a lot of weapons for you to go through, all with different roles for additional benefits, such as ammo pickups or health pickups there. So there really is a lot to get your teeth into. And we couldn't do a great deal within a VIP demo with the limited time that we had with this build of the game, but it certainly gave us an idea of what can be done during the final build and when we have a large amount of time to play. Equally, the customization options were quite impressive, I must say. Not normally being somebody that spends a lot of time looking to change the skins of the Javelin or class that I'm using, I was impressed by the changes that can be made within the customization options. Completely changing a lot of the arms, legs and chest, generally the core of the Javelin's framework. You can change vinyls, you can change paintworks, you can add effects for rust and wear, etc., and emotes and victory screens and all that sort of good stuff will be purchased with presumably in-game currency, which during the VIP demo was earned from missions, but I think at this point it remains to be seen how easily that will be accrued, or whether that will be a microtransactional purchase to get some of those skins, etc., unlocked. I think at this point it does remain to be seen. The NPCs then, and being a BioWare game, there's always a lot of emphasis on the story and the individual NPCs and conversations and the interactions that you have those, and it's no different, I found, in Anthem. I personally can already tell that I'm going to like a majority of the NPCs, and given that you'll be spending a lot of your time returning to the hub world, and conversing with these NPCs to further the story progression or whatever quests you may have, it's important that you can at least bear the sight and the sound of a lot of these NPCs, and thankfully, being a BioWare game, they do put a lot of attention to this, so you can make choices within conversations, you can have engaging interactions with these NPCs that are generally quite quirky and have their own personality and characters, and somewhat lifelike movement during the conversations, which is quite nice to see, as you don't get. Whether my opinion of this will change once the game's released and I've had to speak to the same NPC thousands of times to complete a fetch quest, for example, this remains to be seen, but I was impressed with what I saw during this VIP demo. The surrounding areas for the hub world, etc., are gorgeous and resonate with a large amount of detail, and you can certainly have fun messing around with some of the inhabitants, including this guy here, who I took great pleasure in getting in his way, getting all up in his face and seeing what he was going to do about it. There was actually a pretty good response from the NPC here, and a lot of detail drew me specifically to interacting with him with the mask that he was wearing there, but we let him go after a while to complete his day. On to performance then, and being that this is a demo and an early experience or an early build of the game, there was understandably some issues, but it was still frustrating nevertheless. A number of hours were wasted as the servers launched before we could even connect to the servers, and further hours still trying to actually communicate with others in the social tabs and actually get games to start. Even when we did, there were some issues with enemies disappearing, an awful lot of rubber banding, and some instances whereby whole bosses and entire enemies in strongholds and missions could not be seen by some of the players. It was simply invisible to the player stood right next to them. So it was a bit of an issue for us, and I would calculate that roughly 40% of our time tried to play the Anthem demo was unsuccessful due to the various errors and lack of loss in progression, infinite loading screens, and failing to log into the servers. So I can tell that once the game is up and running and in a better state, in a more final build of the game, that it will run well and that it'll be an enjoyable experience. But based on the time that we had spent with the game during this VIP demo, there's an awful lot of things that need to be addressed, as I'm sure they will before the final builds of the games are released. It's never something you particularly want to see in a game you're very much looking forward to, and it, as I said, it did take from the experience somewhat, but I expect for it to be a more stable version of the game a little bit later on and when the game is released. And there we have it then. That's a very brief look at a VIP demo for Anthem. There will be a further open demo the next weekend, and I'll be looking to capture footage from that, specifically because we'll be given access to all of the javelins in that period of time, which is very, very exciting indeed. Looking to get stuck into that. Also, we'll be looking to make comparisons between the previous build of the game and the open demo to see if the performance issues have been improved, to see if there's any lingering server issues there, or any of the similar issues that we experienced in this video. It's been interesting to make a comparison. I'd like to thank you all very much for watching. I've been Nebula697. I'll be bringing further Anthem videos to this channel as and when we get our hands on the game as it goes through development. I'd like to thank you all for watching. I'm Nebula697. Bye bye now.